Welcome to AI for Good, the leading, action-oriented, global and inclusive United Nations platform on AI. Organized by the International Telecommunication Union, the United Nations Agency for Digital Technologies. In partnership with 50+ UN, sister organizations and co-convened with Switzerland. The goal of AI for Good is to unlock AI's potential to serve humanity. In today's AI for Good event, we are counting on you to use the live video wall feature to ask questions and post comments to help create an engaging discussion. We encourage you to stay until the end to chat, connect, ask questions, and network with our distinguished facilitators and world-class AI experts in the neural network. It is now time to kick off the session and welcome our first speaker. The floor is yours.
Good morning and welcome to the Quantum World Tour, where we take a closer look at how different regions are actually building their quantum ecosystems, what's working, what are the challenges, and what can we all collectively learn from it. Today we're in Canada. This is a country that's had a very early start in quantum science, an early lead rather, but now it's in a very interesting phase where it is turning all of that scientific depth into real industrial capacity. Canada recently committed over 900 million through its defense industrial strategy to support quantum technologies across computing, communications, and sensing, explicitly tying quantum to national security, to economic resilience, and to AI integration. So Canada is one of these places where we can actively study the transition in real time. And with that, I will hand it over to Lisa Lambert for opening remarks.
Thank you, merci Sierra. Hello, bonjour. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lisa Lambert, the CEO of Quantum Industry Canada, or QIC for short. We're Canada's industry-led quantum consortium, uniting quantum technology firms and strategic partners across the country. And our mission is to translate Canada's incredible quantum capabilities and strengths into global business success, national prosperity, and long-term security. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Sarah was saying, Canada was one of the first countries to recognize the quantum opportunity, and we've been investing in this space for decades. Today, Canada is home to one of the world's most vibrant quantum ecosystems, spanning everything from basic research through to a burgeoning industry, as well as to incredible talent and talent development. And you'll get a bit of a taste of that through the discussions today. I'm really excited to get to share a little bit more about what's happening in Canada and with some of our quantum leaders, some of our quantum innovators as well. Back over to you, Sierra, so we can dive in, and thank you all again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us from Quantum Industry Canada. It's very exciting to hear about all of the things that are happening within the ecosystem. So now, so we can get a bit of a flavor of the national perspective, I'd love to turn it over to Rajat Ghosh, who is the manager and National Quantum Strategy Secretariat at the National Quantum Strategy Secretariat, very long title, at the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada. Rajat, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Hopefully you can all see the slides. As has been said by our speakers today, CAD has a long history in quantum technologies. For example, Canadian researchers co-developed the field of quantum cryptography. The first commercial quantum computer was invented in Canada, D-Wave. The first commercial company to develop quantum software was Canadian as well. Canada actually has the only startup that's demonstrated quantum computational advantage, that being Xanadu's. And I'm only highlighting a few of the numerous achievements that quantum researchers and quantum firms across Canada have really spearheaded. Our ecosystem's small at the moment, but fastly growing. It's 115 companies and nonprofit organizations. We have the second highest number of SMEs, or small and medium enterprises, globally, the second highest number of quantum computing startups, a little bit less than 3,000 employees. When I say small, you might think it's a contradiction, even though we have the second highest number. I say small in relation to what it's going to be. We see quantum as a strategic technology that is rapidly growing and potentially disruptive, and we see the sector transforming in the years to come. Recognizing this opportunity, the government of Canada decided to make an investment in quantum technologies in a more targeted manner. To do so, we had to highlight and pick which technologies to prioritize. As you can imagine, there's a number of different technologies. We can't really support everything because quantum technologies in general are resource intensive, capital intensive. Spreading the peanut butter thin won't really do in this space. So we've highlighted opportunities in quantum hardware and software, quantum communications, and quantum sensing. Our first tranche of investments to support these were more foundational. We received $360 million in 2021, followed in 2023 by the development of a national strategy. The reason we did it in this order is because we realized the need to act fast. Money first, strategy to nuance where that money goes second, and then we have to build on that. So foundational investments were really in infrastructure and making sure that we all rowed our boat in the same direction. Canada's a small country, about 40 million people. If we fund activities without coordinating amongst ourselves, we'll never be successful on the global stage. Not the end game, anyway. So to support these missions, we've also gone out and done consultations with industry, academia, and other levels of government to determine what's the next step to be a world leader in quantum hardware and software, to lead in quantum communications, and to have leading quantum sensors. This has given us, this has been the basis of our subsequent investments. So to highlight a few, we recently announced about $340 million primarily to support quantum hardware and software. And I might touch on this in the session after, but quantum computing is particularly resource heavy with the longest development timelines. Giving money in small tranches doesn't really do anything. So to that effect, we've developed the Canadian Quantum Champions Program to assess quantum computing companies that are headquartered in Canada and to help them scale and grow and anchor and stay in Canada. As you can imagine, there's international competition that has almost no end. On quantum communications, we've recognized that this is the basis of the future. The digital economy accounts for most of the economy at this point, and quantum communications is the next revolution in secure transactions. But not only that, it has an inherent capability that's mutually reinforcing with quantum computing as well, being able to enable networked quantum computation. To this end, we've taken the first steps where this year we are launching our KeySat satellite to demonstrate a secure transatlantic communication link between Canada and the UK. We realize although Canada wants to lead, no one can lead alone. We have to be able to work with our peers, with our allies in order to bring this technology to the future. Quantum sensors, we have, they're the most commercially relevant, whereas quantum communications requires strong outlays from government or large amounts of government investment, and quantum hardware has a longer development timeline. Quantum sensors are now. So with respect to navigation, timing, resilience, there's a number of applications that are immediately defense ready, but also have capabilities in the civilian space to augment the discovery of natural minerals, oil, gas, even for safety, to determine whether a flood will happen soon, as an example. We support these through a number of other commercialization type programs, which are more aimed at small and medium enterprise. So let me go to the next slide. So as said before, we don't do all of this on our own. This is a priority for us. This is a national priority for, I suppose, a number of nations. In the years since, I believe more than 20 different countries have a national quantum strategy of some sort. However, this is the first year that the G7 has recognized the importance of quantum. In 2025, under Canada's presidency, we released the Canada Cases Statement, the G7, towards a common vision for the future of quantum technologies and how we can spur collaboration amongst like-minded nations. Canada doesn't support quantum technologies only in the civilian space. We recognize that quantum is inherently dual use. There are applications that will impact civilians, but there are also applications that will impact security, as well as interactions and interoperability with our allies. To this end, Canada leads on a working group for the NATO transatlantic quantum in the NATO transatlantic quantum community, where we work with our peers and our allies on issues of cyber resilience and how Canadian technologies can support to the mutual benefit of our allies. We do this as well and reinforce this with participation in a number of dialogues, QDG, MDQ, World Economic Forum, as well as through trusted bilateral partnerships with other nations, such as the United Kingdom, for example. Now, support for quantum technologies comes across three different tranches. They're the research type collaborations, which we do fundamentally realize, although this is commercializing quickly, that we still have to fund fundamental research to spur the next generation of developments and breakthroughs. There's funds for commercial technologies to scale up the maturity of their products, as well as to help market them and encourage procurement by the government and adoption, as well as broadly talent-based initiatives. In some sense, that's the secret sauce in quantum technologies. There's a limited talent base, and we have to support both the development of talent domestically through a number of programs via NSERC, our National Research Council, other organizations such as MITAX, as well as the transfer of that talent from academia to industry. So hopefully I've given a lot of food for thought and a lot of information and fodder for the panel discussion that proceeds immediately after. I think I'll pause here, and I want to thank everyone again for the opportunity to speak. I just want to leave you with one last point. Canada continues to be a trusted partner for collaboration in quantum technologies and a leader, and we will continue to make prudent investments that will successfully mature each of the quantum technologies, both domestically and to the benefit of our allies. Thank you.
Rajat, thank you so much for that presentation. What this really shows is that Canada's advantage goes beyond the depth that's clearly present across hardware, software, communications, and sensing, because as you've acknowledged, these are very capital and coordination intensive. However, the sequencing that you mentioned, which was funding first, then strategy, really reflects the understanding that there is this constraint of scale. So then the question becomes, once that alignment is in place, how is it then converted into something that continues to compound? Which brings us to our next panel, which will focus on science, strategy, and scale, where we'll welcome back Lisa and Rajat to return, as well as Alexandre Blais, the Executive Director of the Quantum Institute at the University of Sherbrooke. So welcome to all of our panelists. Okay, I believe we have everyone on camera. So I will go ahead and jump into our questions. They're not directed towards anyone in particular. Please feel free to jump in when you have some insight you'd love to share. So first, I would like to ask, when it comes to building a quantum ecosystem, what very unique challenges or advantages beyond the ones just mentioned does Canada face? And how are these influencing your approach to quantum development?
Maybe I'll lead on this initially. So in Canada is a very geographically vast country. So we have quantum areas of expertise that are spread out. In some sense, those have grown into hubs. They started in universities and they've grown to now incorporate a number of companies which have in some cases grown to be unicorns. The initial challenge was twofold. One, ensuring that the hubs coordinated amongst themselves so that we could strive towards a common vision and not dilute investment. That was the first case. Second, there's a role. Canada is a federated country. So we have some powers resting with the federal government, some resting with the provincial government. It was absolutely imperative to ensure that we were aligned with every level of government to ensure that what we were trying to achieve would be reinforced by provinces and even in some cases municipalities.
I can go next, maybe building on some of that. I think there's a challenge and opportunity when you go first on something, and that's been a bit of the reality that Canada's faced with that. One, when you're going first, there's no roadmap or playbook, and you're building that as you go. But with that, it also gives you opportunities to be charting your own path in that front. And I think it's interesting to see what Canada's developed from the research landscape going back, decades ago. It was really exciting just recently to see Gilles Brassard be awarded the Turing Prize for BB84, and it's right in the name 84. So it's going back over 40 years ago right now, and seeing, where Alexandre was based over in Sherbrooke, the work being done in condensed matter decades ago, which led to the foundation of Sherbrooke. Some of the activities we've seen over in Waterloo, Alberta as well. We'll hear from Barry Sanders a little bit later. And then also over in British Columbia, which was a lot of commercial first. We had D-Wave, which was founded way back in 1999 over there. And then if you look at the launch of the global quantum software industry, that came from 1Qubit back in 2012. So it's interesting going when you're looking to trailblaze, especially in a deep tech sector, and chart that path forward. But with that, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think that's also created a real advantage for Canada, where for a country of only 40 million people with a very big geography, it's quite interesting here to see the breadth that we have across the full stack of quantum technologies, as well as key enabling technologies. So looking at our strengths in cryogenics, in photonics, and also with AI, we're seeing more and more intersection between quantum and AI as well.
I can jump on this too. So I think something that Canada has recognized and has done well is that before impact comes excellence in research. And we have excellence in research across the country. We've heard about the hubs. There's 4 main hubs, and there's excellence there, but there's also research excellence across all of the universities in Canada. There's very strong quantum programs. Something that Rajat has also mentioned is that I think because of the size of the country, it's important that we have to go for quality over quantity. We cannot be the number one in everything. We have to make choices, and with the national strategy, Canada is making these choices.
Thank you all for that insight. I think this is actually really interesting because each of you have highlighted the constraints that are related to very expansive geography. And if I'm to think about past episodes and past countries that we've spoken to, there have actually been a lot of strengths where the countries were smaller because it was a lot easier for the different pillars needed for the quantum ecosystem to collaborate. So it really shows that having this unified vision and mission can really overcome that challenge of fragmentation. So thinking about how you've overcome this, I'm very curious to hear, what do you think is the biggest challenge for Canada when we think about the next 5 to 10 years? And how do you think it would be best to navigate those challenges?
I can try something. So I think Canada is very good at starting things. We need to be able to sustain them and scale them. This is true on the academic level, but it is also true on the industrial level. On the side of the hubs, hubs were created through thanks in part to the federal government. There was support in the past for these hubs. The support is more difficult now at the moment, and this is a challenge for these hubs, which are at the core of the Canadian effort. This is where the startups have been created. This is where the talent is trained. But there is excellent news also. For example, what we've seen with the Quantum Champion program that Rajat has mentioned, which is there to support some of these startups that have created in these hubs, and are playing a role on the global scale. Some of these startups that are in the quantum champion program, I've been selected also by DARPA's QBI program, which is an extremely selective program. This is the first time in the history of quantum science and technology that there is a program which does a deep dive into technologies, quantum computing technology, and looks at them from really evaluates their chance of success, essentially, in delivering useful quantum computers within 7 years. And out of the 11 countries, 11 companies that were selected across the globe, including giants like Google, IBM, and Microsoft, we have three Canadian companies, Photonics, Xanadu, and Quantic. And that's really a testament, I think, of the excellence in research that we have in Canada.
Yeah, I'd like to build on that. I think one of the challenges going forward is that quantum is evolving very rapidly. Making investments is challenging. What's the best technology today may not necessarily be the best technology tomorrow. So there has to be a robust way to assess these technologies while still being nimble to the geopolitical environment, geopolitical considerations, and to support winners all the way through towards being champions. I think among the three technologies, they each face, if you want to go a little bit more in detail, they each face some more specific challenges. I think with computing, we mentioned scale, like Alexander had mentioned that. With quantum communications, it doesn't matter if you can communicate, you need someone to communicate to. So interoperability is paramount. And in an area where partners are often competing, that can be a challenge. And with sensors, I think sometimes it's adoption. I think we have all these amazing quantum technologies that have profound capabilities, but translating those capabilities or explaining those to an audience that isn't used to it or doesn't fully understand how to incorporate it, there's a bit of a knowledge gap there, which takes some time to overcome.
And I think relating to some of those, I think there's a recognition across Canada that what got us here won't necessarily get us there to the next phase. And it very much feels like we're heading into a new era within quantum as we're moving more and more towards deployment and adoption. And we're seeing some technologies already in the marketplace and more that are coming along with that. The other thing that we've learned in Canada and discussed already is the piece that coordination is key. And it takes a village to stand up a quantum industry. And it's great to be engaging here in dialogue with Rajat and with Alexandre as well. But looking across research, government, and industry, we all tend to move at a different pace. And when you're looking at coordination to get us all humming along and moving at the pace that's needed in a global race right now is a really integral part. So I think we've got a really good foundation. There's really good relationships, really good dialogue, and really good forums like QIC where we're connecting and integrating together with that. But moving that as we're going forward into this new chapter where there's a lot of geopolitical dimensions and other elements to it that are beyond our control as well is going to be a really key part going forward. But I think Canada is well placed, and I think a lot of that too is because we've been forced into that coordination mode, just looking at the very large geography here in Canada. So looking forward to taking that to the next chapter.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really love that comment that it takes a village to build the quantum ecosystem and that coordination is really key to this. I think that's something that we've seen across all global efforts whatsoever, is that we really need those three pillars working in concert with each other. And Alexandre, you mentioned that it's super important to continue to have the support in order to sustain the ongoing development. And I do want to return to the piece about interoperability because that's very much important, especially as it relates to communications. But before that, I'm very curious to kind of focus on this piece about coordination. So how are policymakers, academic researchers, industry leaders coordinating? And I know we shared a bit about this already, but would you be able to share an example of how a government initiative or an industry maybe proof of concept, how this has directly catalyzed a research or commercialization outcome?
I think I'll lead on that. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. This requires coordination amongst experts, but also among non-experts. So you have to fill all of those holes. So the government of Canada has stood up a quantum advisory council. So that's staffed with advisors who are experts in quantum technologies from the academic landscape, from business, um, and from business as well as other government employees. We use that. They've had numerous discussions on how to prioritize investment within Canada. Again, going to the fact that we can't support everything. I think it's quite public that the Quantum Champions program was suggested by a number of different mechanisms. We had received advice from stakeholders within industry. We'd received advice from partners within other levels of government, also from the Quantum Advisory Council, suggesting that in order for Canada to lead in the next phase of quantum evolution, we have to be able to scale quantum technologies. We have to be able to scale quantum computers, and we have to do it in a way that de-risks public funding but maximizes our potential gains, so that we can develop a quantum computing firm while still anchoring it in Canada. So I think that's one very concrete example where the government pushed it, but that was not, it's not a typical government program. And that was done really in concert, in consultation with, as Lisa said, the whole village.
Maybe I can give one very concrete example, also building on what Rajas has said, of something that I know very well, which is the situation in Sherbrooke, where 10 years ago, the federal government, through a program called CFREF, supported our research in academic research in quantum computing, quantum communication, and quantum materials. And so at the level of $33 million, as I said, for 10 years. And this really has led to a major change in the research in the area. This has led through programs that we created at the Quantic to support students in creating their own startups. That has led to the creation of 6 or 7 startups in Sherbrooke. Suddenly, companies from established companies, 1QBit was mentioned already, established themselves in Sherbrooke. And all of that led to the creation of the Innovation Zone, which is now between 10 and 15 quantum startups, employing, I have all numbers, unfortunately, as of a year ago, employing about 200 people. This is now probably going towards 300 people. So this is thanks to support from the federal government, but also from the provincial government, who specifically supported the creation of the Innovation Zone. And really that required support from all levels. That required support also over a long period of time. One crucial thing to understand is that quantum technologies are very difficult technologies. This is really deep tech, right? It takes some time, and it is perfectly normal that it will take some time to develop them. And that support over many years really is what made this all possible. So that really turned this investment into concrete jobs, 200 to 300 jobs in Sherbrooke only.
And for anyone who hasn't been to Sherbrooke, I'd really encourage a visit, because it's something to go and see this ecosystem building, this community in person. It's something really magical that's happening. Maybe I'll share an example of something that's ongoing right now and has spanned a number of years right now. And that's QIC. So QIC was founded back in 2019 by industry leaders, and knowing that the National Quantum Strategy was on the horizon, we're really grateful that government recognized that this is an emerging industry, and QIC is a bit of a different kind of industry body, because you don't have the established industry quite yet. There's a lot of sector development needs that go along with that. So QIC actually receives support through Canada's National Quantum Strategy, and has been working in really close partnership with Rajat and his team. I think they hear from us pretty much every day, where we're working together through issues and trying to understand different contexts. It's really helpful having someone like Rajat in government, who is a PhD physicist as well, where we can go and tackle some of the issues together and bring different viewpoints. And then within QIC, while we're industry led, we're uniting the whole ecosystem. So we're working with more than 75 organizations across the country, from basic research through to all the different ecosystem players that you need to stand up this sector. So from venture capitalists through to different test beds, through the leading research centers as well, all coming under one roof to shape that direction. And I think you'll get a taste of that today too, throughout the programming, that everyone who's involved in the session today is a member or affiliate of QIC. So it's an opportunity for us to have a collective voice. And I think that collective voice as well, when we're talking to different partners or engaging with government, makes that dialogue a lot easier to be able to point and work together towards shared interests and shared goals.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much. I felt like this really quite naturally exemplified Lisa's point that it takes a village because we saw how government initiatives supported students, led to startups, which then created jobs, which is relevant for both experts and non-experts as we need both in order to actually fuel the industry. So that's really awesome. And before we move on, I really wanted to kind of come back to this piece around interoperability because I think it's really important. And I know, Rajat, you mentioned that communications are great, there's use, but it doesn't actually help if there's no one to communicate to. And so when we think about interoperability and we think about global standards, obviously there has to be this balance between sovereign technology, but also contributing to the global community. So how important is standards leadership in quantum for Canada? And where do you think Canada can help support shaping global norms rather than just adopting them?
Yeah, I think standards development, you've highlighted it very well. Standards development are crucial. They're paramount. They're paramount to launching larger global networks. They really play an outsized role in quantum communications, but they play an outsized role in other quantum technologies as well, such as quantum sensing. If you don't have a common standard, no one's going to adopt your quantum technology. So there's a question of when we need to develop a quantum standard specifically, which Canada does support the participation of bodies of experts to those types of bodies. There's also the thought of when a quantum technology has to align with an existing standard based on capability. And you're right, there's always an interplay between the two. When it comes to existing standards based on existing capabilities, perhaps at a lower level of performance, I don't think that's necessarily I don't think that's the priority. I think when it comes to developing standards, we want to make sure that technologies that are developed in Canada have a fair chance and that we aren't locked out of any types. We don't have any type of vendor lock-in. For example, if you have a standard that's developed for quantum communications by one specific organization or jurisdiction, and that's very different. If there isn't an opportunity to be interoperable with that, your entire industry is under threat in some sense. So, and this is where it comes to geopolitical allies. So I think it's very important to have those conversations with trusted allies, people that you'd be mostly communicating with anyway, and to really have a basis of conversation where you advance, perhaps jointly, something based on excellence. Because at the end of the day, excellence is what wins. If not, this whole endeavor will come to a halt. So that's my take on it.
Maybe I could give a research perspective on this. So I think it's absolutely essential first that Canada be part of that discussion. As Rajat said, I think communication and sensing are more mature technology, and it's time to talk about these standards. For quantum computing, however, it's really early in the game still. There is still many surprises to come. I don't think it's the right time to be thinking about standards there. We don't know what will be the technology that will lead to a universal, useful quantum computer. We have good hints, we have good directions, but they, again, as I said, they will be surprises for sure.
And maybe there's some other dimensions with standards that are really important and Canada's been engaged with for a long time as well. And one of that aspect and the foundation for this is on the metrology side. So Canada is involved in NMIQ as well through the National Research Council's Metrology Research Center, which is a really great effort, I think, for people also to be able to trust in these devices. The measurement from, a sensor is actually measuring what we're expecting it to and those other pieces. So we're seeing different engagement in Canada with this, and I think coming in at the appropriate times. And also something I've appreciated in the Canadian landscape as well is just to Alexandre's point, I think, is being that voice of reason as well within standards development and understanding what's ready, when to engage, and what the path forward might make sense so that we're developing standards in a way that they actually are practical and they're useful and they're leading to outcomes that ultimately from the consumer standpoint, they're getting products and services that they can trust in.
Thank you each for providing your perspective, also very unique perspectives. And I very much appreciate it because I know that anytime we bring up the geopolitical questions, there's obviously a bit of a balance that we have to strike here. And I just really appreciate the transparency. There are so many more questions I would love to ask each of you. I feel that Canada has a lot of depth and like it's a very robust ecosystem. But in the spirit of time, I have to wrap it up. But I have one last question I would like to pose to each of you. When you think about Canada being this trailblazer for quantum, what's one piece of strategic wisdom you'd want other countries, especially those who are early in their quantum journey, to carry forward from Canada's experience in building this ecosystem from the ground up?
I can start maybe, and this I will repeat myself, but I think it all starts from research excellence. We cannot talk about commercialization if we don't have in the country excellent research. One thing to understand is this is really deep tech. This is really difficult to develop these technologies, and supporting basic science is not just good to do, a useful thing, a nice thing to do. It is absolutely necessary to do that because this is where the academic centers are training the talent. We are unlocking some of the key technological hurdles that the companies still have. And we are the creators of startups. So this is, in my mind, not something that is simply good to do. It is absolutely essential to do for success, for commercial success. And I think all countries should realize that.
I think I would add, you can't create something from nothing. Every country is going to have their own unique strengths, even within quantum technology. Some will be more geared towards sensors, some computing. So it's important to recognize what is excellent and to fund excellence. I think these areas need a lot more investment. Spreading blanket money towards quantum technologies, I don't think is a useful strategy. I think recognizing, identifying excellence and supporting that excellence all the way through is probably the best strategy.
And I would just build on Rajat. I know quantum can feel daunting for a lot of different ecosystems, especially when they're just getting started with this. So I would just say, think big, start small, and scale up. And that's been the journey in Canada. I think it makes it a little bit more bite size as you're going, and with that, do it with some really amazing people. I've been around this space for almost 2 decades now, and the highlight of that has been the incredible people that I've had the privilege of working with along the way. And at the end of the day, this might be the most advanced technology we've ever known, but it's people who are developing it, and it's people that are shaping those ecosystems. And the journey of doing something challenging is way more fun and a lot easier when you're doing it with really great people that you enjoy working with.
That's great. Thank you each. We love to be able to carry this forward to other countries that we'll visit throughout the year. And I think that I will say something that we have seen, and I love that you call this out, Rajat, is that there is this need to, instead of spreading yourself to cover everything, be an expert in everything, countries that really focus on what's relevant to them tend to have the most success in building the ecosystem. And yeah, so I really appreciate those viewpoints. And like you mentioned, Lisa, people are everything, which we'll get into in our further discussions with the startups and then also with the workforce. And actually, I do have one more question for you. So sorry. But I really wanted to ask, what do you hope for Canada in quantum? What are your hopes for quantum in Canada over the coming years? I know this one was a bit of a surprise, so.
All right, I'll jump in, I think. I guess really I'm just going to reframe it as what does success look like? I think what success really looks like is a vibrant commercial ecosystem that's supported by a strong research base tied both to universities and beyond. And I hope that all of this results in the development of products and technologies that really impact society in a beneficial way. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't have an impact towards broader society, then what are we really doing? And I think that has research dimensions both in the physics, in the societal aspects of it, research, as well as providing jobs and security for people. So that's what I hope we get to.
I think Rajat said it very nicely. It would be difficult for me to add anything to that. I think it covers the whole spectrum.
Yeah, we'll leave the mic drop with Rajat on that one. Well said, Rajat.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. I think that this panel really exemplified what it takes in order to coordinate the three pillars. And it's also always a great opportunity to hear more about the work that Canada is doing, both locally, but also how it's shaping the global ecosystem as a whole. So thank each of you for joining us. And as we move on to our next showcase, our industry showcase, we'll really get to focus on the people who are building within the quantum ecosystem. So what does it actually take to build a company focused on quantum technology? And I have three people that will be joining us today. So I'd love to welcome Alex Mayerian, co-founder and CEO of Phantom Photonics. We have Julian Camarand Lemar, the co-founder and CEO of Nord Quantique. And we also have Heling Pu, the Chief Operating Officer of Quantum Bridge Technologies. So up first, I'd love to hand it over to Alex Mayerian, who will present around Phantom Photonics. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much, and it's really nice to be here. That was a wonderful panel. I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay. All right. So welcome, everyone. I'm Alex, co-founder and CEO at Phantom Photonics. We're a company that works on quantum LiDAR. A little bit about us. We are a spin-out from the University of Waterloo, just near Toronto. We're at about 12 employees today and growing. We are also a NATO Diana alumnus. We've got a quantum technology that is at about a technology readiness level 6. We've been able to raise a little bit of money in the last year as we work through developing our prototypes, and we are very much a product of the Canadian ecosystem and of the NATO ecosystem, relying on partnerships and funding and business development help, everything that is required to make a startup work. And so I'm going to dive right into what we do. Quantum sensors has been mentioned as one of the kind of key technologies that is going to push quantum forward, and we do LiDAR. To get everyone on the same page, LiDAR is a sensor that does 3D imaging, and it is composed of two parts. It's got a laser and it's got a camera. LiDAR has a shortcoming in its range. So the way it works is it'll send out a pulse into the environment. That pulse will travel to an object, bounce off of it, and come back to the device, to the camera. And the camera will read how long it took the light to travel to the object and determine how far away it is. If you scan the field of view with these pulses, you get a 3D image of what's in front of you. The problem is when a pulse of light travels through the air or the water or whatever your medium of interest is, it tends to lose intensity. And if that pulse of light travels far enough, then by the time it bounced off of the object of interest and came back, you may not have enough light in that pulse or enough photons in that pulse, as we say, to actually tell that something was there. And so at Phantom Photonics, we're improving on both sides between laser and camera, if you will, of the LiDAR. We encode the light immediately after it exits the laser, so we stamp it with our signature. And so if the light travels very, very far and only a few particles of light come back, we also use single photon sensitive detectors that can tell that there are a couple of photons there, but they can also tell that they were the photons that we sent because we encoded them. So we have a very sensitive LiDAR system that it can achieve greater ranges. The technology is also stealth, and basically unjammable. You can't blind our LiDAR very easily. And so what we're looking at on the screen here, it's a submarine that is being imaged. This is an artistic rendering, but in fact, we've discovered in our market assessment that there is a big need for imaging underwater. And sonar has historically been the solution underwater, whether it's for imaging or communications. And it turns out that sonar is loud because it uses sound, and that gives away the position of the user. It's also beaching the whales, and lastly, it has a limited resolution. So typically, if you're using sonar to image something underwater, you're seeing a 3D point cloud with points about 30 centimeters, maybe 20 centimeters apart. So you can't get that really fine-grained resolution if you're looking for structural integrity of some asset underwater. And that takes me to LiDAR underwater. It exists. It gives very high resolution, but it does need to be very stable underwater to get that high resolution, and it needs to be very close to whatever it is that it's imaging. And so that carries risk inherently. The risk being that underwater, you've got waves and you've got currents, and if you're really close to whatever you're imaging, you might collide with it. And so the way LiDAR underwater is deployed today, it is either as we see it in this image on a tripod, or we use very large robots like this one to maintain the stability of the LiDAR in the waves and currents. Necessarily, this vehicle has other sensors on it and other devices, but this is the kind of robot that is required for this deployment. Deploying such a robot requires this large ship with a crew of about 50 people. And after 2 days of imaging, you're looking at a price tag of approximately $1 million. That's between the mobilization costs of the ship, the daily rentals, paying the crew, doing the post-processing. It's a big ticket to pay, and it keeps a lot of smaller players out of being able to access high-resolution data underwater. And so at Phantom Photonics, with a LiDAR that can see much farther than existing LiDARs underwater, so the comparison being between 7 meters and say 150 meters, we have developed a technology that could potentially do imaging without being very close to the object of interest. And it turns out that underwater, most of the things we want to look at are within 200 meters of the surface. So that puts us in a very good position to look at an image underwater infrastructure or do surveillance by deploying surface vessels. For example, buoys that are being demonstrated in this video. What else is interesting about this particular technology solution is that you can leave the LiDAR in there over extended periods of time, which today wouldn't quite be possible. If 2 days of imaging runs you about $1 million, you're not leaving it in there for much longer than that. But if you don't need 50 people crew, if you don't need to pay a rental fee for a boat, a vessel, all of a sudden you can leave it and see what you see over long periods of time. And so this enables the ability to do something called change detection. So that if you're monitoring, for example, the rate of decay of steel infrastructure, or if you want to monitor whether or not someone tampered with a certain, I don't know, cable line, then it becomes feasible to do this in a high resolution and at a reasonable cost. Ultimately, though, at Phantom Photonics, the device that we're developing, the LiDAR sensor, can be put on a photonic chip. This is an extreme miniaturization of its form factor, and that opens up a lot of other doors. For example, satellites, which have very limited space, very limited power to work with, could be an interesting use case for a chip-based LiDAR that can see very far. Cell phones, we think, might be the moonshot, where iPhones have LiDARs on them, and ours would use less power, see farther. So this is kind of the future of what we're building. Currently, the prototypes are large. They're about the size of a briefcase, and they're getting smaller and smaller, but the chip is the goal. All of that said, I would like to talk about our journey through the Canadian ecosystem. We started in 2023 as a company. Prior to that, we were at the University of Waterloo working on this LiDAR in the lab, where we had funding from NRC. And as we moved through kind of the years, we took part in just about every program that we have here in Canada, from patenting programs to market assessment. We got advice with respect to prototyping. We were able to interact with Innovative Solutions Canada and hire interns through the MITAX program and to do environmental testing through NATO Diana, and be incubated at Velocity here in Waterloo, which was a wonderful incubator. We got office space, we got lab space. It is a building and a program designed to help with prototyping, actually. And so kind of, I just wanted to give an overview of a journey that is strictly non-linear, but there's a lot of support here in Canada. So I would just like to end on a note and reiterate something Lisa said that I really liked. And she said, think big, start small, and scale up. And that just, it rings so true from my experience with all of this, that I thought I would reiterate it because it is so to the point. But that is my presentation. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much for presenting, Alex. I have to say, I don't think I've seen many startups on the tour that are leaning into a domain like underwater imaging. So very, very interesting. Great to hear what Phantom Photonics is doing. Up next, I'd love to welcome Helen Pu, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Quantum Bridge Technologies. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, everybody, and thanks, Sarah. Let me quickly share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen now?
I can see your screen, but currently it's just black for me. I don't see any slides yet.
Okay, give me 1 second.
No problem. There we go. Now I can see it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. My name is Healing, and I am the COO of Quantum Bridge, and we are a Canadian company building the quantum security solutions. Basically, we offer the quantum safe solutions for the communications, especially for the government and defense, the financial institutions, as well as the critical infrastructures. So here's some basic information about the company. So we are a team that is a spin-off from University of Toronto. The company was founded in 2019, and our core mission is to secure the mission-critical communications against the emerging quantum threats by integrating the quantum-safe technology and solution into the existing infrastructure. So by far, the company has grown into a team of over 20 people, and mostly focused on the technology and product building. We have raised over 10 million USD in terms of the private capital, and we are expanding in terms of partnerships and product portfolios. So what is the problem we are solving? We are addressing the problem of the quantum of the key distribution. As you know that one of the vulnerability, a major one, lies within the key distribution, because we normally primarily rely on the asymmetric encryption, which is vulnerable to quantum computing attacks. And when it comes to the solutions of the quantum security, the experts normally talk about the 3 types of the technologies. The first one is called the post-quantum cryptography, or PQC. And it's based on the asymmetric algorithms, and it is standardizing by NIST. So there's like pros and cons for each of the technology. For this one, PQC, it is software-based, it's cost-effective, but it's not provably safe against the conventional or stronger computing powers. And the second type of technology is quantum key distribution, QKD. It's based on the the quantum physics, and of course, the benefits is provably safe, and it identifies eavesdroppers before the communication happens. But we know that it's currently has a limited range of communications. It's quite costly when it comes to deployment. It comes with not only the software but also the infrastructure that is needed. And the third category is called the symmetric key establishment, and it's based on physical distribution of the random data. So the benefit of this technology is that it provides the provable, safe, cost-effective security. However, it does require the out-of-band delivery of random data, and this is where that Quantum Bridge actually comes into place to innovate. We created a innovative protocol in the symmetric key space called DSKE, or Distributed Symmetric Key Establishment. So what we did mostly is that we have removed the central point of trust in the conventional symmetric key establishment by replacing with multiple security hubs. And also we removed the scaling issue, like n square issue, by introducing our protocol. But let's quickly take a look at the national agency's perspective when it comes to the quantum safe migration. We see that actually there's a similar trend when it discussing about the solutions. For example, we see on this position paper on QKD, the migration to PQC and all the adoption of the symmetric keys are required. And we also see that when we need the symmetric pre-shared keys used instead of or in addition to the asymmetric public-private keys. And here is how Quantum Bridge provide our first solution based on our DSKE. We built a software-based product or platform symmetric key distribution system. And on this platform, we offer the PQC and DSKE, and we are compatible with QKD. So what this means to the customers is that it brings the first value proposition that the customers get the cryptographic agility, meaning they are able to switch or choose either quantum safe cryptographies they want instead of having to worry about getting stuck into one particular algorithms. And the second thing is that our solution or platform is built based on the existing standards, standardized based API. So we can simply plug and play without having to rip off the existing infrastructure. And the third value proposition for the customers to know is that the DSKE protocol is especially the future-proof security. We have the security proof that ensure we are provable security. And here's the typical setup when we talk about the site-to-site communication. Of course, here's just two sites, site A and site B. And obviously, when both sites are communicating with each other, it's based on normally PKI, and it's subject to harvest now and decrypt later attack, which is a more or less immediate attack that the malicious parties, although they cannot really decrypt your encryption today, they are able to store them and wait until the maturity of the quantum computer. And by the time that they have the quantum computer, let's say in 10 years, they'll be able to break into the encryption and see through what is protected inside. So the question is, if your data is sensitive and has a long-term value, then this piece of data is at risk now. And in current structures, infrastructure, it's difficult to upgrade to use QKD or PQC directly. And here's how Quantum Bridge SDS solution comes into play. So one of the major components here is the Quantum Bridge key management entity. And we configure and install one key management entity at one site. And this is a software, is able to connect with multiple existing network appliances. And through the standardized based APIs, we're able to provide any combinations of the quantum safe keys, PQC, DSKE, or QKD keys. And we also have the security hubs operating in the background in terms of distributing the DSKE keys. And we have the Quantum Bridge Cortex, basically a controlling center for the customers to monitor and control their own cryptography. So through this solution, both sides are able to communicate over the public network while ensuring the quantum security. And built on the initial success of the SDS, we had the feedback and conversations with the customers, and they're looking for or any organization who has the sensitive communications cannot just rely on the third-party non-quantum safe cryptographies and for the end-to-end communication. And that's why we built the second product. It's called the Quantum Bridge Platform. And this is a quantum safe end-to-end encrypted mobile app. And the difference compared to, let's say, Signal is that we own the cryptography, which is our symmetric cryptography, DSKE. So through this app, we're able to onboard the users in a very scalable way. We simply scan the QR codes by onboarding people to the security hubs in the background and authenticate people. And then we can create this, invite people into this network of DSKE to communicate in a quantum secure way. And let's look at some use cases quickly. In 2024, we had in a workshop of G7 central banks discussing the financial resilience in terms of the quantum security. We provided our DSKE protocol to ensure the long-term security among the central banks to ensure some of the important information transactions. We also experimented with DRTC to resolve the issue of long-term security for communication between data centers. And very recently, we announced with Toshiba that we did the global QKD and DSK integration, because the QKD itself is strong in near distance networks. But when it comes to longer distance, it is hard to maintain the same provable security. So the global QKD DSK integration in this case ensured that the IT information theoretic security while removing the limitation of communication distance. And I wanted to end it here. Quantum Bridge has been fortunate enough to be in this place in the early stage, and we have seen that there's evolving policies. There's quickly developed the standardizations and the different solutions. Each organization is exploring the use cases, and we have been able to kind of provide the solutions for to meet the demand that is already evolving. And we know that this takes a whole community to actually make a success. So we are really open to really have the further conversations to explore the use cases that your organization needs, and to figure out a way to support you better in terms of migrating to the quantum security. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen. Really interesting, especially on how we make quantum safe security deployable within existing infrastructure, which is very important. Thank you so much for your presentation. Up next, we have the co-founder and CEO of Nord Quantique, Julian. Julian, welcome to the tour, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for attending. And pleased to meet all of you. So I'm Julien Camira-Lemire. I'm co-founder and CEO of Nord Quantique. So we are a quantum computing company based in Sherbrooke. And as it was mentioned also in the previous panel, we are one of the leading contenders, also a Canadian company that are making strides in the global ecosystem as being part of this very competitive DARPA program in the US, but also working closely with our own government here in Canada and the defense sector today. And as you know, quantum computing, so the way we see it and the way we would like to see it is really as the next frontier in our ability to compute. When we think about today's infrastructure, ranging everywhere from our PCs and the CPUs that back this infrastructure, all the way up to GPUs, which is now powering this AI revolution that we're all living in right now. Quantum computing and the underlying hardware is really the next frontier in this ability to compute. But beyond this also, with quantum, not only comes more powerful capability in the way we solve problems with this technology, but also comes new opportunity and the fact that we will be able to solve problems that are currently intractable to even the largest classical computer or the classical data center that is available to us today. And alongside this revolution comes also new players, just like Quantic, building this technology with really the aims to integrate this into the existing computing infrastructure all this year. And also, if you've been following the field of quantum computing in the last decade, I think it should be appreciated also how much the field has progressed, how much the industry has progressed, mainly also just from a notion of scale. 10 years ago, we had a small quantum computer, and what is used to power a quantum computer is qubits, and we count the scale of the quantum computers by the number of qubits. And now we have quantum computers that have anywhere between 100 to 1,000 of these physical qubits to operate these systems, which in principle would be enough to solve some of these very challenging problems, especially in the material and pharmaceutical sector. However, it turns out during that progress that scale is not the only issue. We also need to care about performance, and managing errors in quantum computing is a very challenging task, one that often requires large overhead, especially in terms of hardware size. So we're talking about quantum computers that have between 100 or 1,000 times more qubit to solve these problems, which is very a big challenge that the industry is facing today. And this is also the reason that Quantic exists. The reason that we built this company is to solve that error challenge, not only to reduce errors in quantum computers, but also make these systems more scalable and reduce the system size. So when we founded the company in 2020 in the ecosystem of Sherbrooke in Quebec, it's really with this mission of solving the error challenge, but also building quantum computers that are rack size, so the size of a few racks basically for a single quantum computer, built on a proprietary technology that we have been developing since then. Since our foundation in 2020, so we have been into a couple of scaling phases, and we're currently going into what aggressive one this year. So we're more than 60 people right now. We'll be more than 100 in next year. And not only we're building the company here in the Sherbrooke ecosystem, you should see Quantic really as a spin-off from the scientific excellence from all the research that was going on into this Institute Quantic sector in Sherbrooke. But really the reason that we were able to develop a quantum computing company in this ecosystem is also the access to very unique piece of infrastructure that supported the growth of the company. So our company today is leveraged more than $1 billion of investment in various infrastructure. Think of fabrication facility, benchmarking facility, and also all this infrastructure being supported by more than 100 people that supports our activities day in, day out. Which means that our company in quantum computing, despite that it's a quantum computing hardware company, we're pretty much capital efficient, and it's really a strong element in building the story here in Canada. So with this, let me just tell you a little bit more about how we fulfill our mission and our objective of building a rack-sized quantum computer based on this error-corrected technology that I've told you about. So something that I've mentioned earlier is that solving the error channel, so building into performance into quantum computers required quantum error correction, which is basically your error management layer in quantum computers. In most platforms, building this error management layers needs a large overhead. We're talking 100, 1,000 times more qubits. So this leads to very large systems in the end. And the reason this overhead is needed is because quantum error correction consumes one thing. And this one thing is redundancy. So you need some form of redundancy in a quantum computer to sort of detect the error and be able to correct it while the computation is going on to be able to carry on with it and turn this sort of noisy quantum computer into a useful one through the use of quantum error correction. The way we build it at Quantic is to avoid this overhead, we use a very clever architecture that is based on superconducting circuits. We have an example of one of our first qubit that was built at Quantic on the right side here. This is a superconducting qubit that is built on a superconducting platform. And for those of you that are familiar with this field and the various technology that are being developed in the field, this is a very well-known technology. However, the way we build these qubits is very different from what you have seen from the industry in the last past decade. And we build these qubits that are called bosonic qubits, in which we embed a lot of microwave photons into a single cavity. And the reason we do this is that we can use the fact that we have many photons inside a single cavity to build enough redundancy to enable quantum error correction on each of the qubit that we build. In each of these qubits then can be integrated in a fully fledged quantum computer, but now with the advantage that we don't have this overhead in terms of hardware to achieve error correction, and we call this the 1-to-1 ratio. So every qubit that we build comes with this ability to do quantum error correction. Not only we are able to do this with this hardware, but we were the first in the industry to actually achieve this milestone. So get to that point that we can improve performance through the use of quantum error correction in the field, which is really one of the missing bricks into bringing the quantum computing technology to usefulness today. More than this, we also have leading performance in terms of improvement of the hardware through the use of quantum error correction. But really the key advantage here is the reduction in size that comes with this 1-to-1 ratio that I've talked about earlier. And just to give you a sense of what we're talking about, so this is really these rack size systems. So even for a system that will compose of 2,000 of these logical qubits, or these error corrected qubits, it's only 10 meters square for a full system that costs 30 million to build, compared to some of the platform that you will find out there that will cost more than $1 billion, and that will be the size of a full data center. And for that reason, something that we're pretty excited about our technology is not only like building quantum computer. Of course, this is the first step in the journey, like getting to these systems that have enough performance to really be useful to the industry, but also integrate these systems now that they are compatible in size with data centers, or work with government, defense, but also data center partner to integrate these systems in existing infrastructure. And with this, I will leave it there, and hopefully we can have a little bit of time for questions. So thank you for the opportunity to speak here.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Julian. It's exciting to see what Nord Quantique is doing in the industry. And I do have a question, one I would like to pose to you, but each of our previous presenters in the Startup Showcase. And that is, what advice can you give other countries based on your experience toward building and supporting the group, the industry expertise?
Yep, I can speak a little bit about our own journey. I think what was instrumental in our own journey is two things, I would say. One that was mentioned also earlier, I think it is important to grow out of excellence. This is deep tech, and this is very hard technology to be developing. We need to grow around hubs, just like what we have here in Sherbrooke. This is one aspect. But the other piece, and I think this was quite unique to our story, is all the support we had from existing infrastructure, having the ability to access any way from prototyping facility out to industrial scale facility, but not having the need to rebuild everything that is maybe accessible in some location. So we add all of this in our own ecosystem. And this was really instrumental of not only building a business, but also building a sustainable, capital efficient business to the point where we are today.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really important because we have both Nord Quantique, which is very, very much developed and mature in the industry, and we've also been able to hear from the startups, the ones who are closer to the startup phase. So this is very interesting and valuable insight. Thank you, Julian. Also, Alex Marion, if you're still on, I'd also love to hear from you on any advice you'd like to provide to others who are looking to go on the startup journey in quantum.
Advice that I would like to provide, I would say that we have so many resources available in Canada, but what people may not be prepared for is the amount of perhaps paperwork that it requires, and follow-up and going back and forth. It's there, but you really do have to seize it, and you got to deal with it. But it's not available everywhere in the world. You know, it really is something to be grateful for and take advantage of. So I would say keep track and be on top of everything that the Canadian government is doing for us, because there's a lot. And also that the folks in the government are really rooting for us. They want to help in every which way that they can. They're our friends. So if you're a startup, know that you have a friend and champion in all of the representatives across the board at the government level, and that it's really a collaborative thing building a startup. So to just keep in mind that it's a really big community of support.
Thank you so much, Alex. I don't think I've had anyone ever call out the paperwork before, but this is an industry that's very much, there's a lot of regulatory and legal things to consider. So definitely something that anyone in a startup would have to spend a lot of time with. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and for your presentation as well. Awesome. So we've just seen a few people within industry who have very different technical paths, but ultimately they do converge on the same constraint, which is people. None of these systems get built, scaled, or deployed without a workforce that really didn't exist a decade ago. So now we're going to step outside how we build and what we build and focus on how do we train the people who will build. And I'd love to welcome two panelists. First, we have Katania Kuntz, the founder and CEO of Cubo Consulting Corporation. And then we also have Barry Sanders, who is a professor at the University of Calgary and was involved in creating Quantum City. So welcome to both of our panelists. It's great to have you.
Sorry, I can't, I don't have permission to turn on the video, it says.
Oh, no. Let me see if we're able to.
Oh, now it is. Oh, no, it didn't work. Oh, no, it works.
Wonderful. Welcome, Barry.
Thank you to the organizers for inviting me.
Awesome. So I'll go ahead and jump right in. I really want to take some time to talk about education and training, but also the importance of public awareness and engagement. But first, I'd love to know more, and perhaps, Barry, this is a place where you can really speak to it, is how are educational institutions in Canada integrating quantum science and engineering into their curricula, both for really specific programs related to quantum technology, but also maybe more broadly and interdisciplinary for engineering programs?
Sure, okay. Yes, as Katania said, thanks for inviting me. So happy to be here. What's happening, I would say, across the board with universities, I'll speak to, is curricula in courses are being revised somewhat. So there's new approaches to teaching quantum mechanics that there's always a trade-off, but trading off some of the older established uses of quantum mechanics to some of the ideas that need to be used for quantum information, such as quantum computing. We're modernizing programs, and also it gets exciting for the students to explore these. Some universities have established quantum engineering programs at undergraduate level, and then there are specialized master's degrees in quantum, usually technically oriented, so like a 1-year coursework type program to be able to learn quantum. In Calgary, we took a different tack. So we have a professional master's program that is not about training in quantum mechanics, but really it's about what is the industry about, where does quantum computing fit in, what are the use cases, how can we deal with it. So it's it's another aspect of the professional side, training for the professional side.
That's really unique. We don't always hear that. Sometimes we hear that there's very specific ones that are more geared towards the quantum physics side or the engineering side. But very much we need more courses that are geared towards the professional side and helping those who don't necessarily need to be experts in quantum mechanics, but need to be able to speak to how do we communicate about quantum, how do we sell quantum, and how do we communicate about it in a very realistic way based on where the state of the industry is. And so thinking more about that, and well, rather thinking forward. So curious, based on both of your expertise, what skills do you think will matter the most for quantum professionals broadly 5 years from now that you don't think are emphasized enough today?
Go ahead, Katania.
Well, I think it's hard to project 5 years from now what kind of skills we need. I think right now it's more about addressing the knowledge gap. And so there, like you said, you don't necessarily need to have a formal background in quantum physics to get involved in the industry. So as Barry mentioned, the University of Calgary has this master's program and giving you that chance to get involved that way. But some people don't have 1 or 2 years to take on training. They need to know what is this quantum stuff, and I need to know now. So my company, Cubo Consulting, has also partnered with, for example, organizations like MyTax and NATE, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, to offer quantum education to both engineers, the technical background that aren't quantum experts, and also executives who are more curious about the use cases, the how are these technologies making my company possibly vulnerable. Also, I want to be a first mover. So the first mover advantage is quite strong in this industry. There are commercialized technologies already, like in quantum sensing, for example, also quantum materials. There's a quantum company in Edmonton that is actually creating better batteries. So we heard about, well, how is this going to benefit society earlier. So all of these things, I think the skills to you need to get involved and maintain over the next 5 years, both technical and non-technical. So technical skills like coding, if quantum computers require software. So if you have coding skills already, you could transition to starting to work on quantum algorithm development. Also like welding. So some of these technologies require cryogenic fridges, and this requires basic thermodynamics, plumbing, electricians, things like this. So yes.
Okay, I'll add to it. I agree with the gist of what Katanya says, that really the skills in building up quantum industry, go at all levels, that there need to be partnerships, the polytechnic level, the university level, et cetera. Most of what's needed by the quantum companies is not specialized, so we often talk about developing a quantum ready workforce, and it's important, but not every member of the team needs to know quantum mechanics. There's all kinds of things to be known. Now, I like to think of a push side and a pull side. And so the push is creating quantum technology, and the pull side is how does quantum technology address needs that would be in demand in a market economy? And so for me, the important weakness I see, and the one that's not sufficiently discussed, is the workforce training, so that people say, oh, I get what quantum technology is about. I know when it would be ready. I can write it into a business strategic plan, so put red flags up saying, okay, at this point, we need to hire people. We need to start to put resources into something. And that side is unfortunately weak, but it's weak globally. So it's good news for Canada. We're not behind. So uh, I think training people to think skeptically, critically about what quantum technology is about, knowing what they need, and then knowing if, when, and how quantum technologies would fit is really important and really underdone.
Thank you both. I also agree. I think it is quite weak globally and something that we need to focus on. Katina, I did want to say really interesting about the welding piece. That's not something I'd considered before. I
Yeah.
was at a conference one place where I found a company that was specifically designing the nuts and bolts for cryogenic hardware. I thought that was incredibly niche and specific and much needed. I did want to ask both of you a question. I'd love your perspective on something. I've been at a lot of events where I've met young people specifically who are very interested, who want to contribute to quantum. They think it would be a very fascinating and fun career, but they don't necessarily know where to get started. They don't know if they should lean into the technical side, the business side, the comm side. So if you're meeting someone who's more of a generalist, what sort of advice would you give them on where to start, which resources to start looking into so that they can kind of find where they fit into the ecosystem?
Okay, I'll go first on this one, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So I think to me, it's very hard to say, okay, I've decided I'm going to work on, say, quantum computing. So it's not gearing up the career that way. It's do what you do, and then if you want to go into, say, quantum computing, is that a relevant set of knowledge for quantum computing? Are you targeting working for a quantum computing company or a user of quantum computing? And then get good at that. And then I think, and this is why I'm committed to that professional master's program as an example, is then upskill. So to me, get the skills that prepare you for a wide range of career possibilities, but have overlap with what quantum computing needs. And then upskill at the time, uh, take a year, do something, go somewhere, upskill, and then a company that needs your skills and knows that you have some good understanding of what the particular quantum technology is about, will look kindly on you.
Yeah, I agree. And I get asked that question a lot. I also have a research position at the University of Waterloo at the Institute for Quantum Computing. So my company is based in Calgary, Alberta. So I straddle the west and the east of Canada. And I give outreach talks, for example, on the KeySat mission. So that we heard about that earlier. I'm part of that quantum communication satellite mission. And so I took the traditional route. I went through, my undergrad at University of Calgary, and then went all the way to Australia and did my PhD over there, and then came back to Canada to continue my postdoc research. So that was a very traditional route. Obviously takes a long time. So as Barry said, it's more about doing what you love, finding where your skills could match into the industry, and then upskilling. Unless you do want to be a quantum physicist, in which case you might have to do the traditional route like I did.
I think that's great, and I'm obviously very biased when it comes to I really enjoyed those answers because I loved writing, wanted to be involved in quantum, so I started writing about quantum and upskilling along the way using the resources that are available to the community. And of course, this is something that can also be done, and then if you need to supplement with the formal degree programs, also an option. But I really appreciate the insight. There are a lot of people who want to get involved, but find it very intimidating to find that starting place. And then kind of along the same lines, when we're thinking about formal versus informal, traditional versus non-traditional, what structural changes do you think are needed, if you think any are needed, to ensure that quantum careers are accessible beyond academic pipelines?
You want to go ahead, Barry?
Yeah, so the way I interpret your question is, what do we put in place so that a person can prepare for quantum industry without necessarily taking a degree study? And so I'll blow Catania's horn for a moment and say, her Cubo consulting or Cubo operation is one such path, and she'll speak in a moment. But there's public talks, there's YouTube videos, there's books out there, so there are plenty of ways to learn without having to sign up for a degree course. There are things like, if you some of the companies like IBM Qiskit, there's micro credentials that you get by passing certain things. And I find that a lot of people are writing to me saying they would like to be my graduate student. On their CV, they list number of micro credentials for having done this or that. So I won't go into a list, but there are opportunities to learn about things. And Sierra, I think you've done that yourself, gone down also studied those side paths. So there are plenty of ways to do it. It just depends what you want. Sometimes don't avoid the academic path if you want to be an academic working on the field. But yeah, so I guess I'm a bit of a maverick here. But yeah, academia can be overrated. And so there's other ways to learn.
Yeah, and this was part of the motivation for founding my company, right? Is addressing this knowledge gap, and not every YouTube video is the same. There's a lot of nonsense out there. There's a lot of people that try to dumb down the quantum concepts so that it's more approachable, but then they lose all of the scientific accuracy. It's an art. And I think I walk that line quite well. And the feedback from my recent MyTax series proves that. So it's about finding a common language to understand what is this industry, and then just continuing your learning path. So as Barry said, yes, I offer training in these areas, and it's not just quantum computing, right? Like we heard, it's also sensing, communication, and materials. So I caution people when they start Googling what is quantum, it's really important to try to find like reputable sources. So also, as Barry mentioned, there are tutorials online. So if you have a little bit of a background in coding, you can try coding an actual quantum simulator, computer, a system. A lot of the companies now have free online tutorials. They'll have use cases that you don't have to code. You just put in your variables. The traveling salesperson problem is a very common one. And so you put in number of cities and it will use a quantum algorithm to optimize the route, things like this.
Thank you both. This is very useful, especially for anyone who's listening interested in a career. And Katanya, I love that you mentioned that it's an art to balance the two. Like, how do you make the abstraction more accessible without losing the fundamental mathematics and physics? And I think this is very, very important. I did study physics as part of my background, so I had a bit of knowledge coming into it. But one of the first books I had picked up was Quantum Supremacy. And which I was very quickly told by the community that that was not the right resource to use. So there's definitely a bit of both out there.
Christian Reed book, if I may, or not. Sorry, another gentleman. There's a blog that actually goes into all of the inaccuracies in that book.
Oh, amazing!
Chris Ferry. Yeah,
Chris
yeah.
Ferry. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, that's a great supplemental reading for anyone who has put time into reading Quantum Supremacy. And then, kind of on this same topic of accessibility, what steps do you think are being taken to ensure diversity and inclusion in Canada's quantum workforce development? Are there programs that are encouraging women, underrepresented groups, or people from non-traditional backgrounds in the field?
If I may. So we've heard about MyTax, for example. They're a federal nonprofit organization that helps to unite the university academic system with industry, with the talent, with the students, with the workforce. And so we have a partner, Cubo has a partnership with MyTax offering quantum training, quantum training workshops, and they're online and they're also bilingual. I've partnered with the University of Sherbrooke at the Quantum Algo Lab. And so I was able to do online training. So it was offered across the globe, basically, right? And also bilingual. So we could support French as well as English. And so I think this is one way that Canada really shines in making a very inclusive environment. That's also what we got as feedback from those workshops so far, that it's really important with this topic in general, that you want to make it a very inclusive, a very inviting. You don't want it to be judging. You don't feel stupid if you ask a question. Like, there are no stupid questions. The stupid question is often the one that's the smartest question asked sometimes, right? Like, you think it's a stupid question, but it's not. If you have that question, 10 other people in the room do too. So I think that's the best way to approach it. And again, by doing things in person is always better for other reasons, but online is allowing us to be more inclusive for all communities, as long as you have access to the internet.
Okay, and then I'll comment that so within the academic institutions, we have EDI policies and EDI support people. So we work with professionals to be able to implement according to best practice. And then there's training available, courses available. There's studies of the systemic issues underlying EDI issues, and then there's performative measures for EDI to gauge how well it's performing. But all that said, I think an important principle in EDI is it's only as effective as the buy-in from the community. So there are efforts going on. It's a longer term effort because the key element is to create awareness and train accordingly. The US collapse of DEI is not helping in Canada because it's strengthening voices that are anti-EDI. And then within the program, there are encouraged funds available, et cetera, for being able to reach out. And then, so in my own group, for example, I encourage training. I give time off for, if somebody has some EDI activity, and they're doing graduate studies, say, then there's time off for it. It's really like the way I see it is there's a menu of available things to be able to do EDI. It matters to me, so I reach out and try to figure out how can I make things work without pushing too hard. But it's up to individuals how much they're going to buy into it. I wish it were otherwise, but those are the facts.
And that's really helpful to understand, and I also think very real, and definitely something that we're still struggling with in this industry and others in the U.S. So yeah, absolutely, the dialogue has really increased anti-EDI voices across the board. While we're still on this topic of accessibility, I also wanted to kind of come back to the linguistic component. So this is another kind of barrier. A lot of resources for quantum are in the English language. We're seeing increasingly more resources in French and Spanish, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So curious to know if there's specifically Catania, do you extend collaboration to Francophone Africa, for instance, with supporting awareness on quantum in French?
That's a great question. I do have collaborators across the world, and I encourage them to reach out to me if they would like to be involved with my organization. I don't specifically have any collaborators in where you mentioned, but I want to create a multilingual training options through my company, and so that's what I'll be working on over the next few years. Yeah, because I see a real need, and obviously it doesn't have to be in English, and this is not the most spoken language in the world, so.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear.
I don't have anything to add to that.
And then I have two more questions I want to pose to you before we wrap up. So the first one is what I've asked other panelists, and that's what's one piece of strategic wisdom that you'd want other countries, especially those that are early in the quantum journey, to carry forward based on the experience of building the quantum ecosystem within Canada?
Sorry, what's the question?
A piece of strategic wisdom you would offer to countries actively developing their ecosystems based on Canada's more mature ecosystem and the experiences building that.
Okay, tell the country how to do it. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Maybe I'll jump in here. So I've done that a bit. I was on a panel with Qatar that's been investing in quantum computing, and I do serve on some strategic bodies, and I was part of the Canadian effort. So again, when you ask me, so like I'm not a good one to ask because I'm not very representative. I just say what I think, and I'm just going to say what I think, but it's not typical. There's a lot of strategic planning going around, quantum computing, having that access without necessarily a full understanding of what they're getting into. So we're seeing, it's interesting, we're seeing countries, the UK just announced recently about acquiring a number of quantum computers, et cetera. So it's a really interesting problem. If you have a technology that hasn't demonstrated usefulness in terms of what taxpayers want to get, at what point do you get in? Do you get in early to be able to ensure that you have a supply chain, the expertise, the workforce, et cetera, so you're ready for it? Or do you wait longer? Is it better to be the prime mover or the secondary mover or something else? And so my bit of strategic advice is first, like make sure that a strategy is a strategy, not a way to spend money. So sometimes a country will announce a strategy. We're putting this much money in and we're allocating in that way. That's not a strategy. That's a plan. And so first rule is if you are going to make a strategy, make sure it's a proper strategy. Make sure it's governed by real needs. And then as you keep going down the workflow, so downstream, a person in the end doesn't care if the computer's quantum. They just care if it solves their problem. So you got to meet in the middle in a strategy. What is the end user benefit? What is the maturity of it? Have the real conversation. And unfortunately, that's not the way things really work. The strategies you see aren't strategies. They're not well thought out. They distort the market. Blah blah blah. That's my rant.
I always love your rants, Barry. I would just add to that again, as Barry said, there's a lot of people jumping into this and they don't know or are lacking the knowledge to appreciate what is the actual maturity level and the actual capabilities of these quantum technologies. And even if they aren't ready to be industrial scale rollout right now, it doesn't mean to ignore it. If AI has been teaching us anything over the last several years, that when new technologies come into play, it affects a lot of sectors. And all of our signs point to yes, that the quantum industry will be disturbing all of the industries, all of the sectors in some way. And not necessarily with computing. There's also, like I said, other technologies that are commercialized now. Quantum random number generators. There is a real need to have these types of devices in your various applications. Various industries use random numbers. So that's just one example. So I would say my recommendation, start to address your knowledge gap. Because if you have no idea what this stuff is, then anyone could sell you anything. And there are people selling snake oil and claiming it's quantum and it's not. So it's about educating yourself to understand what are these technologies, what are the actual maturity levels, what is a real roadmap to potential industrial use cases, and et cetera.
Thank you
And
both.
if you want help, reach out to me.
Yeah. Thank you both. I loved both of your answers. And Barry, because you say what you think, I think that actually makes you a very strong candidate for answering the question. But very appreciative because I do think that this is the most important piece, which is quantum is not a solution for everything, nor should it be thought of as a solution for everything. It's not a blanket solution. There are some countries that have challenges that could be best positioned to be solved by quantum, and perhaps they should be really thinking about their strategy. And there are some that might not be there yet, and so perhaps it's not the right time. So thank you both. And my second question was around advice to give to governments about strategies, which I feel like you've both effectively answered. So thank you for that. And
one point on that, actually. I'll just mention, in getting advice, the best practice is diversity, right? Make sure that you're consulting diversity. But the way countries often do it is they'll consult winners, like Nobel Prize winners, Turing Prize winners, et cetera. If you win a prize, you win a prize for knowing one thing. It doesn't mean you know everything. So yeah, they don't always pick the diverse advisor list, which is a problem. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I love that point. And just to add on to that, I agree. Quantum's already complicated enough. So just to be an expert in one type of technology is already a lot, which is why, for example, my company has expanded and taken on quantum algorithm developers, because I'm not a quantum algorithm developer. I'm a quantum physicist studying optics and communication and things like this. So no, one person cannot be an expert in everything, especially now. And so surrounding yourself with these types of people will really help you to advise in the right directions.
Yeah, no, I love that point for both of you. I think we've seen a lot of governments that maybe focus, or not even governments, but groups, entities, what have you, that will focus on advice from maybe one person or a few selective voices within the sector. And it's definitely not giving the overall picture, especially when we all have collectively so much more to learn about quantum. So thank you both for this discussion. I very much enjoyed it. I felt it was incredibly valuable also for anyone who's seeking a career in quantum or wanting to understand the technology more. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap Canada's Quantum World Tour. I feel that this episode made it very clear in Canada that quantum is defined by how deliberately the ecosystem has been built across research, infrastructure, companies, and people. This isn't just a technical problem, but it's really a matter of coordination. And that's ultimately the purpose of the Quantum World Tour, to surface how different regions are approaching that challenge in practice. So thank you to everyone who joined, and we'll continue the Quantum World Tour in April with our next stop.
Thank you for participating in today's AI for Good session. We hope you've learnt something new, innovative, and engaging in today's event. We now encourage you to continue the conversation on the live video wall in the neural network. Here you can ask questions, like and comment, share links, complete the poll, connect with interesting profiles, or speak one-on-one using the chat and video function. We invite you to explore the lobby, try the smart matching quiz, visit the virtual exhibits, poster boards, the e-shop, and build your personalized AI for Good program. Let's shape the future of AI for good.